Eagle-eyed Urban Legends fans might have spotted an old friend in Marvel's Loki. Yes, a sinister black arcade cabinet labeled Polybius. You might have seen this before in The Simpsons or in this Nine Inch Nail music video. These are referencing one of the most enduring video game urban legends, one that predates Ben Drown's or Lavender Town. As the story goes, Polybius was a cursed arcade machine created by the government to test out mind control technology on kids. Anybody who played it got addicted, and if you played for too long, you'd suffer from amnesia, nausea, hallucinations, seizures, and even death. But did it ever really exist? No. If it did, I would have said the original cursed arcade machine that totally exists, and not urban legend. You know I would. I wouldn't play you like that. This is one of those stories that's widely spread, but not widely believed. It's just kind of fun to lean into. But there is some real fascinating history backing it up, and most of it has to do with what a sketchy company Atari was. The game is said to have originated in Portland, Oregon in 1981. The earliest artifact is a post on coinop.org from the late 90s or early 2000s, which is around the time a young urban legend-obsessed nerd in Southern Illinois first heard about it. And that nerd? Well, her name was Jenna Stieber. All right, perfect take, we got it. The coinop.org post was updated sometime afterwards to include a title card. It's a screenshot, so it had to have come from a ROM, one that the post says totally exists, like for real, guys. But if it did, there would certainly be ROM files, and more screenshots, some Let's Play videos, unless everybody who recorded Let's Plays got amnesia. I hadn't really considered that. The card marks the copyright as 1981, held by a company called Cineslotion. Rumor held it that Cineslotion was a subsidiary of Atari, contracted by the government to create games for nefarious purposes. This is my favorite part of the Polybius legend because it's the most accurate in the weirdest way possible. I'm not about the Cineslotion, the company, that there's just no evidence to suggest that ever existed. But Atari did have a secret subsidiary, one that they created for the sinister purpose of selling knockoff Atari games. Back in the 70s, Atari had exclusivity contracts with certain arcades that prevented them from selling their machines to other businesses. So if you wanted to play Atari, you had to dunk your milk money at specific spots. But demand far exceeded the bounds of that contract. So Nolan Bushnell created a subsidiary called Key Games to sell slightly off versions of Atari's own works, circumventing the agreement. The company was later acquired by Atari after the scheme was exposed. Key Games did also make original games. One of them, Tank, was so popular that it kept Atari afloat through some financial troubles. That's like if your clone was better at saving for retirement than you, so you just reabsorb them. While Cineslotion didn't have any government contracts, because it didn't exist, Atari did have government contracts and exist. After the release of Battlezone in 1981, Atari was contracted by the military to make a training simulator for the Bradley fighting vehicle. According to an ABC News report, the government wanted to study if soldiers would play it voluntarily, and if it really would improve their combat capabilities.
And there's even talk of using electronic games as a recruiting gimmick.
The Bradley Trainer, as it was called, didn't seem to take off. Atari only produced 2 cabinets. One has sort of circulated amongst rare arcade collectors. The other was reportedly delivered to Fort Eustis in Virginia, although reports are split on whether it was ever actually used. The yoke that Atari adapted for the machine was later further adapted for other Atari games. Despite the fact that only 2 cabinets were made, there is a wealth of artifacts that prove the Bradley Trainer existed. There is even a ROM, which means YouTube does have Let's Plays of it, although none of them seem to end tragically. One theory is that Polybius is a prototype of Tempest, a hugely popular vector arcade game released by Atari in 1981. And in fact, prototypes of Tempest do exist, and one of them did make players sick. David Thurer, the developer, has described a version where the landscape itself moves. The player would spin a knob to rotate the tunnel while the spaceship stayed still.
And it was making people nauseous, which is not a good thing.
But it's unlikely that the motion sickness version of Tempest ever escaped the Atari workshop. One prototype, Vortex, got a full cabinet build. But we have a ROM of that one too, and it's clearly not a version that would make you chuck your Lunchables. I mean, it looks a lot like the regular Tempest, so like, what's the deal? As far as harmful arcade incidents go, there are fewer than you might expect. There's one specific incident that's generally considered the origin event for the Polybius legend. In November 1981, a 12-year-old in Portland tried to beat the record for the longest single game of Asteroids, which is, as expected, an Atari game. His attempt was cut short after 28 hours and 14 minutes due to a tum-tum ache. Listening to this history, you might think Atari was the only company out there making coin-op games. But actually, 1981 was the industry's heyday. Revenue for arcades was in the billions, and it was more money that was being spent on movie tickets. And it was way heavier too, because it was all in quarters. So was Atari cursed, a harbinger of bad omens and upset tummies? No, curses don't exist. Atari's games were just really popular, and urban legends feed on the biggest elements in pop culture because that's where the most meat is. It's why Pokemon has lots of urban legends, and fighting Foodons does not. Anyway, everybody knows that Polybius isn't real. What we actually need to be worried about is this Minecraft mod that, if you play it while streaming, it turns all of your viewers into zombies. My aunt works at Twitch, and she told me that that's why Ninja started streaming on Mixer. If you want to read more about Polybius, I highly recommend historian Kat Despira's exhaustive work researching it. We'll put a link in the description so you can check it out.